other things involved in it, that the DCYF would just turn that over to the department so that there would be a department hearing on the alleged educational neglect.
I actually talked to Mary Ellen McKay about that, I believe is the chairman of that commission this afternoon. And what her feeling was that DCOF is having a hard time doing all the jobs that it's tasked to do as present. It doesn't need any more jobs. And she thought the idea of having education sent back to DOE was a wonderful idea. Whether that flies in her commission or not, one needs to see. I mean, I don't know, I'm not on that commission. But that discussion hopefully will be taking place.
So I just want to make sure, because I'm the secretary, make sure I have this right. So the commissioner is making a policy change. So if there's a homeschooling family that are not meeting the homeschooling law, then they would not fall under the safe harbor of the homeschooling law, is that?
No, that's just the way it is.
That's just the way it is?
You know,
Okay.
if there's no notification,
So if they aren't,
I wouldn't say he's changing a policy, because he led me to believe that he was going to put that into effect essentially immediately back
Okay.
in June.
okay.
And we have really not been seeing discussion of cases about DCYF on NHHomeschooling.org, although Steph could be quite correct that it could be due to summer vacation.
Okay, so if they're not meeting the homeschooling law, requirements of the homeschooling law, then they fall under the truancy?
Yes, correct.
Okay, all right.
the goal is, even in those cases, the goal would be to have DCYF agree if it's just educational neglect, or even if it's educational neglect and other issues. The goal is to turn the educational neglect portion of it here so that it's not DCYF that's investigating educational neglect, because they're not familiar enough with, especially the homeschooling law.
Right, so what if somebody's meeting the law, like they filed a letter and they're doing the annual evaluations, and somebody still files an allegation of educational neglect? Is
Well,
that then?
they could, but if it comes here,
Uh-huh.
and the department says, well, look, that they've notified, the department contacts the district says, they've notified, they're under compliance, you know, you can't say that
Okay,
they're.
so,
My recollection is the commissioner said something to the effect that he could send them a letter saying that they have complied with the law.
Mhm.
okay.
Yeah, because we can't, you know, you can't be adding requirements, you know, because someone has complained, oh, my neighbor isn't, you know.
Right, yeah, no, I'm just wondering what happens when somebody makes a complaint
Yeah.
like that, though,
The first
because
thing
I
you do-
always thought that that's the kind of instance where things might get routed to DCYF, not when people aren't filing
Yeah,
their
well,
paperwork.
I can answer that, because over the years, those kinds of calls, they would come here, and it would end real quick, because the department would find out if there was a notification, and depending on when that call came, whether it was 15 years ago or 10 years ago, is the family up to date with whatever the requirements are? And if they are, goodbye educational neglect,
Okay.
you know, which is the way it should be.
Okay, all right.
Does that answer your question?
Sort of, I'm gonna write this down and have everybody read it, because I feel like slightly confused still, but that's okay.
But when we left the meeting, we left the commissioner with some flexibility, and now he was going to resolve it, but he said he was
Yeah.
going to resolve it, and I trusted him to do so, the results certainly looked like he has.
Right, no, I just wanna make sure I understand it, so I'm giving people correct information.
Yep, very good.
So, yeah.
If no one else needs me, I have an appointment in 20 minutes, so, thank you.
Joe, thanks for coming.
Yep.
All right. Ellie, do you have something for us?
No, the only thing I have is just general request for home ed information. And I'm assuming since that LSR, I just had a couple people asking for clarification.
Mhm.
One of them thought it was being voted on, and I said, no, this
No.
is just an LSR,
Right.
it's not on. That's it.
Okay, so all quiet on the home front for now.
Mhm.
Okay. Okay, we move to old business. The council membership, I already went over that. And we should be back up to a full council real soon. So that's a good thing. Next, the meeting procedures. I call them meeting procedures because this doesn't cover the right to know stuff that's gonna be coming into the picture when we have better clarity on it. So I didn't wanna make it look like this was the extent of what we at HEAC are supposed to know and comply with. But these are the meeting procedures. That way, if we get agreement on this today, we can vote on it and it'll go into effect. And I had one section that I put in red, a quorum is not required to continue a meeting. And I put that in red because there are different opinions on that. We can't, once we lose the quorum, we can't vote anymore, but we can continue discussion. And I wanted to ask the legislators what their, because you deal with this.
Well, I have this article from Cordell Johnston, who has dealt with 91A, or back as I can remember, and he had, I think this is a pretty good explanation. Can a public body still act if a quorum disappears? Can a quorum be present for some purposes but not for others? Must the meeting end if a quorum disappears? No, you can still go ahead. I think the most important part is that you cannot vote.
We can't vote,
You
yeah, that's
cannot vote.
obvious.
You cannot take a vote, but you can certainly
Yeah.
discuss a lot of things.
We don't do a
Okay.
whole lot of voting here anyway.
Well, see, there's a bit of difference in perspective here, because I've always thought that there should be more votes than what we've been taking, but I wasn't, you know,
But there weren't a lot of votes when Abby was the chair either.
It
I mean, there's not a
depended-
lot of action items.
it depended on what's going on, basically. But I just wanted to get your input as to whether, from your knowledge, we could keep talking. We can't act, but from what you're saying, yeah, we
Right,
can
we
sit
can
here
keep
and
talking.
talk. We can't,
You
we
agree
just
with me,
can't
Glenn?
act.
Yep,
Yep.
always, Senator.
Ah.
Here is the boss. the big
Oh,
boss.
Commissioner,
The big boss. Right, I'm small.
you have the floor.
I have the floor, okay, yeah.
I know you
we're
have
just for a couple of
someplace-
minutes, right?
I know you've got someplace to go.
Yeah, sorry about that, so. Can everybody just go around the room and let me know who's here?
Amy Gall.
I know Amy, yes,
Cara Barlow,
from
New Hampshire Unschooling.
New Hampshire, what?
Unschooling New Hampshire.
Okay,
Sorry.
great, no problem.
Hi, I'm Jen Pereira from Catholics United for Home Ed.
Okay,
I'm Helen Rist, representing NHSAA, New Hampshire School Administrators Association.
okay,
SAU 16.
okay, yes.
Oh, Michelle Levell, School Choice for New Hampshire.
Glenn Cordelli?
Janet Ellis, Seacoast Christian Home Educators Association.
Ruth
Ward?
Ward.
Okay,
Ellie Riel?
Amy Fahey in Higher Education. Caroline Villeneuve, homeschooler.
okay, so I'm trying to figure out who board members are, I know who you are too. Yeah.
Okay, well,
Like, so who's an observer and who's a board member? Do we have a quorum?
yes. We have a better
Raise your hand if
quorum.
you're actually on the board,
We have a better quorum than usual.
Non-voting member on the board.
but you're a board member. Legislators are
non-voting
members. Non-voting,
Right.
okay.
Yep. Needs to be appointed to take Heather's place.
Is that what we're gonna have to have done? Okay. So we just have to check with Heather and see if that's how is that what she wanted to do?
That's what she has mentioned to me, but
Okay, so
She
we
was
just
going to
have to
speak with
connect.
you.
Yep, we haven't, but she's out of town right now,
Right.
so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just know that we've had difficulties getting quorums and trying to make, everything kind of come together, so I appreciate everyone attending the meeting and working on the various issues, of which there are, I'm sure, plenty of things that are being worked on. And I guess I offer my support to the work that you guys are doing. I am a strong advocate for home education. obviously having invested much of my life in the process. And I think that it is personalized education to the extreme, right? It creates opportunities for students, and I think that's what we want to make sure that we're doing for everyone, so. But anyway, so just stopping by to say hello and thank you so much, okay? Yeah.
Thank
Can
you.
we ask you a quick question?
You can.
We had Representative Marsh here a few minutes ago, and.
Representative Marsh.
Yes.
Bill Marsh, remember
Okay.
we met with you on the matter of DCYF and the department looking
Truancy.
at what.
Okay, truancy, got it,
Yeah.
okay.
Right, and just can you clarify, he had mentioned that maybe there was a policy change, and can you clarify whether that happened and maybe where we can get a copy of it? if
I
there
don't know
is
of
a
any policy changes. Ellie, do we have?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah, I am not aware of any policy changes with respect to DCYF.
Okay.
Was that a DCYF policy change?
No,
was-
he,
It
yeah,
was,
can
it
you-
was actually a homeschooling policy, so the question was, what happens if there's a
Is it
complaint?
a policy or a rule? So.
Oh, I don't know, that's the
He said
question.
policy.
Yeah, he said policy.
He said
Policy.
policy. An internal DOE policy where the allegations of educational neglect will be dealt with as truancy issues at the DOE instead of being sent to DCYF.
Yeah, so not familiar with any I've not had any conversations about that, so. If it's something, do I need to have some conversations
Well,
about it?
he
And
had-
maybe
he
as a
had
board,
said
if
that-
you guys wanna,
He had said that George, yourself, Mike Donnelly, and Representative March met in June to discuss this issue.
McDonald?
Yeah, well, he was on the
On
phone,
the
he
phone.
wasn't at the meeting, he was on
Okay,
the
so
phone.
remind me again?
That was, back in June, Bill Marsh had set it up, and he called me, and he said it was okay if I came. And we were talking about the fact that right now, when someone would call the department and say, hey, you know, my neighbor is not homeschooling the right way, so on and so forth, the answer they had gotten before they became commissioner was, well, we don't have jurisdiction over that. So it would automatically get kicked over to DCYF.
Okay.
And you had indicated that the department could instead of replying, we don't have jurisdiction, that the department could give the answer that, yes, we'll deal with that, and go to the superintendents, basically with the idea that this is come on, it's a word, truancy. You know, it's a truancy question. If the people aren't, in fact, doing, if they're not signed up.
So if someone doesn't, if someone fails to file an intent to home educate, then, and they don't send their kids to school, then they are truant, even if they happen to be educating their kids at home, right? If someone files a, again, I have to go look at these laws, and I apologize, I haven't looked at these in a little bit, but if someone files a complaint against a home education or a student for educational neglect, then that is, under the current statute, my understanding is that that is part of the definition, educational neglect is part of the definition of child neglect, is that the right, am I using the right vernacular there?
Yeah.
Which does fall under the jurisdiction of DCYF, correct?
But if the question is simply, did they, because sometimes people have filed, and it's just a matter of verifying whether they filed.
Correct.
And if they haven't filed, then it's up to the district.
To have filed, exactly, so if you've got a student who has not filed and is at home and not going to school, that's not educational neglect, that's truancy.
That's truancy, yeah.
But if somebody's filed and there's an allegation of educational neglect, what happens then? That's the confusing part to me.
So if there's an allegation of educational neglect, I would guess that DCYF would be brought in and they would,
Okay.
you know, investigate that allegation of educational neglect. And obviously if you're home educating your kids, that's okay, and so I would advocate, you know, it's a good idea, I think, for people to join HSLDA in the event that those types of things happen, and they can advise you, you know, they can provide legal advice to you in that case.
It used to be under the law, previous law, there was a hearing here at the DOE if there was a problem, an an allegation of it.
So I've not had any of those come to my attention, and I'm not familiar with it,
no,
but
it's a
I can
long time
familiarize
ago.
myself with that process. I don't, was it under a different set of rules
It
or a
was under,
different process?
the law changed and removed that due process hearing at the DOE. And so
Okay.
it used to be that DCYF sent the cases of alleged educational neglect to the DOE for that type of
So I
hearing.
apologize, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay.
But if this, I mean, and this is the right forum, you know, if there are some changes that need to be made to rules or laws, I think this is the right, you know, it's a decent forum for those things to be vetted, and I'm happy to take a look at them.
Because the concern is that people at DCYF aren't experts in education, and so they're making decisions about these families without really understanding home education as a
Correct.
paradigm,
Right.
so, yeah. That's a problem.
HSLD membership, right?
Yeah, the wording, because it's the new LSR that's been put out, and the wording puts back, if it were to pass, it puts it back on the DOE.
Okay, so, so this is another, this is a bill that's been filed, right? I'm not sure that, you know, again, I haven't read the bill, and I suppose that you guys will be taking a position, but it doesn't seem to me that we've had any kind of persistent problems under the current laws that warrant some type of an intervention. And the schools actually have on law today, they have the ability to intervene in the event of a truant situation, and so that is one way, and a school would obviously know if an intent to file for home education has been filed, and so if somebody calls up and complains to the school, this kid's truant, or even if DCYSF contacts the school and says, we believe this student is truant, the school can be like, no, I have my intent to home educate, I don't need, there's nothing there, so we have that remedy. And then the other remedy that you have in law, obviously, is if particularly, you know, if educational neglect is part of child neglect, then there's already the remedies under there if somebody believes that that's taking place. Although I don't know if that's the best place for that either, so. So I think there's plenty of remedies, I'm not sure that, I'm not
There's
sure
best
what the
remedies.
objective is today. What's that?
I'm not sure if they're the best remedies in all cases.
Well, I'm not sure if this is a
No, I
remedy
don't.
that
Yeah,
actually
right.
leads to a good solution,
No, I
so.
don't think so either, at all.
Again, I'm the department, I don't take positions, but I just am reflecting on the observation there.
Right, yeah, it just that Representative Marsh had seemed to imply that.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, so nothing has changed
No, there
here,
was-
so,
there was a meeting.
it was what?
We did meet.